Once again, I am Patricia Lucia, author of Wildflowers and Present Tenses. My friends call me Patti, and so can you. I'm joined by my co-host, Taylor. We do this every week on Sunday at 10 o'clock, where we read a story, we'll read excerpts from a particular story out of my book, Wildflowers and Present Tenses, and then talk about the broader themes that are in it. If you haven't already purchased my book, the best way to purchase it is on my website, where you can get a 15 to 25% discount, and that is pattiluciawrites.com. That's Patti with an I, pattiluciawrites.com, and you can get a discount in a deeper discount if you if you subscribe. So at any rate, I'd like to introduce my wonderful co-host and soul sister and my favorite prego in the world, Taylor Callahan.
Hi, good morning. So glad to be here. Today we are talking about trusted and treacherous adults. So I do want to put a trigger warning out on this. There will probably be some triggers in this story for some. And I just want to advise that before we move forward. I know for Patti, these are some of the hardest moments of your young adult life. Yeah. And I think that all of us here can really relate to these stories, and definitely have our own versions of those to share. So
many.
Without further ado.
Yeah, this was one of the harder stories to write. We've talked about this. Definitely one of the harder stories to write. And one of the interesting things about writing a memoir is that as you are writing things down, and as I was working on my memoir and writing more of my memories down, more memories come, and deeper, and sometimes memories that
you start releasing things that you had completely forgotten.
And and it's not always pleasant, but that's why I say
the healing.
That's the healing. That's the healing. And that's why I say memoir writing is a healing process, and I recommend it for anyone. So some of the things that I write about in this particular story are those such memories, the memories that kind of came up in the midst of writing my memoir. It's like, oh shit, and then it's like, do I really want to write about that? Yeah, I probably should, because I found that the stuff that I was most resistant to was probably the stuff that I really should write about. But it was difficult, and it was also a difficult story to I felt like even the quality of my writing was affected by the difficulty of these memories. And even in the end, I felt like I wanted to end it on a happier note. It was kind of one of those things where it's kind of like, this story doesn't really end on this warm and fuzzy note, like some of my other stories. It doesn't end on a warm and fuzzy note. And I felt like that was about as honest as I could be now in this moment. If I write this story, if I rewrote this story in another 5 years, I might be in a different place. I might write it differently, but in the moment, that's what I wrote. So.
And I was flabbergasted to see that as an English teacher, the Florida Department of Education decided that it was your department's job to coach these kids on things like suicide and human trafficking and substance abuse and depression, anxiety. It's very telling that would get put onto the English department's shoulders.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that they put it on our shoulders is because every student has to take English. So that way we are guaranteed that every student will get the message, even though we had no training whatsoever. And when it got to the sex trafficking unit, I didn't know how to have that conversation, even though I knew that conversation living here in West Palm Beach, where it is a very huge problem, one of the largest sex trafficking in the country. I knew we had to have it, especially the girls that, if you watch the Jeffrey Epstein documentary, those girls were at Royal
I
Palm.
went to school with those girls. I'm friends with those girls, personally know them.
Just a few
and
miles.
As a matter of fact, when I was in middle school, I was very outspoken about my personal issues at home. And the guidance counselor decided that we needed to have a group that we could talk about these things. And so these girls from the Jeffrey Epstein saga, I'm not going to name names. I love you all. If you're watching. They would sit in this room. It was more like an non-group, but there were issues. One girl in particular, her parents were homeless and they were prostituting her out for drug money. And this girl came to school every day because it was her only escape. It was, and so this group, I'll never forget, the faces that are in this group and where they are today, is telling as well. But I was grateful for that in particular guidance counselor who knew and saw these girls need somewhere to go to talk about it, even if nothing happens, even if nobody does anything to help them.
Talking is like writing your memoir. You release it, you get it out, and it helps. And the guidance counselor has a master's degree in that field. And as English teachers, we were given a half an hour little training on what we need to do, and then they would give us, this is the writing prompt, and this is what you need to discuss with them. Now they just go online and do it themselves. So they're, we don't even know if they really are getting the information that is critical for them to have.
Or have now I just want to.
And some of those girls were getting picked. Jeffrey Epstein's girls were getting picked from your school in particular. So you're sitting here like, oh, great. So this is my job now?
I absolutely had students several years ago who had gone to his house and had been at some of the parties. They just weren't the ones selected. They would just bring a host of girls and then he would pick his girls. But I do know one student in particular, and she was so bright, though. She knew that something was not right, but everybody else, the money, the big house, the party, it was how they
were all broken girls.
They were all
exactly. And that's what they. Now, I just want to interject for people who are joining us on Facebook or others. We are joined today by a teacher colleague of mine, Michelle Walters, and so she has graciously agreed to join us in the conversation this morning as a fellow teacher and as someone who's obviously seen firsthand what a lot of this looks like in our schools. So thank you again for joining us, Michelle.
It's my pleasure.
So
And so I assume 40 years ago, I don't know how my timeline is there, that these things were much more swept under the rug. In the early 2000s, we were allowed to talk about these things. But when you were growing up, it was not acceptable. You were shaming your family. It was unheard of. Families kept their shit inside their house.
That's true.
Women being beaten, it didn't leave the house. Church, the things that were happening at church, which is all coming out, in today's world, guys, is quite a problem. The Me Too movement has now also become at church, hashtag at church too moment. That's got its own hashtag. And so you, Patti, personally knew of a story you were expected to go to church every Sunday and look this man in the face. And I know, Anoki, you have a lot of personal experience with this as well. And it infuriates me. It makes me very emotional to know that these trusted adults that are supposed to be preaching the gospel and talking of, the utmost power and love of Jesus Christ have the audacity to step foot on a stage and knowingly have hurt children.
When
while they talk about,
it wasn't just,
you
we trusted, because I've had an incident with the church also. It was that our parents, our grandparents, they trusted them. And so if you spoke out, that you had to be making up a story or lying, because that's a priest, that's a nun. That can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for me, that was very much the case. Like growing up in school, I have to say though, like growing up in general, like my teachers were the most helpful people to me in life with no training whatsoever. They saw me and knew that I was broken and knew that, they didn't need to poke the broken human being. They needed to try to help the broken. And I had some that sucked, but then I had a couple, and one of them was my home ec teacher. I really, really, really will always have a deep love for her, and she still teaches, and she's awesome. She's a beautiful person inside and out. I was being Baker acted so many different times, throughout the course of the year, that my teachers had to be involved in that aspect, that I wasn't there because I was hospitalized, because I was in a situation where everything around me was manipulated. My problem became the church. Like, started out as my family and then became the church to prove it wrong. Like you're saying, how could that be? He was already a great person in the eyes of everybody else, so just put all the cherries, bells and whistles on, and then it became the church. And I think for kids growing up, nowadays, like Tay, you said you were, spared from a lot of that because, there was an awareness and stuff. I was kind of in this separated realm of the world where if Christianity is still really prominent, then it's not much different than growing up in the good old days, because that's what most Christians are striving for every day, modesty and a lot of secrets and a lot of, saving face for the greater good, and yeah, I might make it out okay, but who am I going to ruin in the process of it, and who am I going to take down with me, and how am I going to break my grandmother's heart, my sister's heart, my family, how am I going to let them know that I just dealt with that, because I didn't know how to express that had happened. So for me, it was easier to talk to people at school. It was easier
that didn't know the
like,
person.
My teacher, she looked at me, and she knew, and cared enough to ask, and the people around me every day didn't,
my English teacher saved my life. You know what I mean? Like,
but I've had the opposite side of that. I've had the opposite side of that spectrum too, where a teacher read my suicide letter out in front of the entire class, and like she picked me up by my hair, dragged me to the front of the class by the whiteboard, made me read it out loud. And it was a suicide letter that went like, I've tried so hard to love you guys. I deal with so much at home. You don't understand what it's like to not have a dad and not have, your family. I all I ever wanted was to be your friends, and I want nothing now. I just want to lay down and I want to die, and I was in fourth grade. And this teacher read that out to the entire, made me read it out loud to the entire class as they laughed at me, and she helped them, encouraged them to shame me.
Yeah.
And then And then
a bad teacher, but she was a bad human being.
Yeah.
she won Walmart's Teacher of the Year that year.
Are you kidding me?
Oh no,
No,
I'm so
and
sorry.
that is
Fucked up
something
shit.
that I will never ever forget. You know, like you know, you deal with things like that. You know, like, but you can't let like a bad person shame out the beauty of the good people. You know, and my whole life, you know, I've been told don't talk to that Judas, don't talk to whatever, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, like plans were made before, you know, they got there. Everybody knew what had to happen. And Judas was the only person who was close enough to be kind enough to give the kiss, you know, to make it all happen. You know. And I feel like every person that anybody's pointed out to me, I'm like, that person's a Judas, that person's this or that, you know. I need to find out for myself, because 9 times out of 10 the one that's been shamed and stuck in a corner is the one with the most humility and caring and kindness, you know, and the one that helps me up, you know.
And the one who protests the most is the one who really should be wearing the scarlet letter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we see that over and over again.
I'm so
But
sorry,
yeah.
Inoki, that happened to you, because that in fourth grade, I can't even imagine. And that teacher of the year should have been fired immediately.
Yeah.
Her name, I'll throw it out there. Her name was Barbara Rivera. She was a giant woman. I mean, she was really, really tall. She was like 6 foot something, you know, and just so intimidating and huge, you know, like, and acted that way. And it really stuck with me for a long time, you know. Like I'll see somebody that looked like her, you know, and from afar I'll be like, oh man, you know, and I start going over in my head all the love that I could pour out on her now to maybe make her see, you know, how love would have been so much more effective than that, because that just, you know, when you're fighting a fight like that, to deal with things like that, you know, at home, at school, not have friends, you know, like, because your school is shaming you right alongside everybody else, you know, like it's tough, because the adults shamed me, the kids shamed me. It was what was I supposed to do, you know? And then everything was acting out, you know? No, everything was just wanting to wake up and breathe.
You weren't
in and out.
You were asking for help.
Right.
Anytime asking to live.
Acting out or misbehaving, or I know something's going on with that child. And even if you wanted to say something to that teacher, you wouldn't be able to. I had a teacher in 5th grade do something. It wasn't as horrific as what happened to you, but it scarred me. And I always said, if I ever see her, I'm gonna curse her out. And I was about 16 or 17 and saw her in a restaurant, and I started shaking and crying, and I couldn't even walk past her, let alone go up and tell her, you know what you did to me in 5th grade? That was horrible. No, I couldn't do it.
See, I've been in that spot a million times, and I'll tell you, you can walk up to somebody that threw litter down on the ground, right? And Patti and Taylor have heard me say this story 400 million times. You can see somebody throw a piece of litter on the ground, and you can run up to them, and you can yell at them and be like, oh, you threw this litter on the ground. Look at what you did, you know, and they're going to look at you, and they're going to take everything out of their pockets and throw it on the ground. They're gonna curse you out. You're gonna get a big whatever, you know, and leave. Like that the confrontation of it isn't ever. When I was a kid, I was angry about stuff. Now I realize like love heals things more than any of that ever could, you know. Like so when I talk about like rehearsing in my head what I would say to her, you know, I mean in love, you know, like how could I go up and tell her, you know, Miss Rivera, I'm a survivor of, you know, 20 years of torture trauma. You know, I was tied up as a child, you know, and beaten. I went through all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, I didn't fit in my home. I didn't fit in at the school. I didn't fit in anywhere. You know, and I know that things are tough and they're hard to understand everybody's point of view. But I want you to know that I'm a survivor, and you're just as loved as I am. you know?
Yeah.
And that's all I would ever need to say. I wouldn't need to tell her, you know, you made me want to, you know, die 10,000 times over, because that's not who I am or where I'm at, you know.
Well, the
Like,
thing that she taught you was that you will never treat another human being the way she taught you or
yes,
treated
Right.
you. So you did learn from
yes.
her. You
Yeah.
learned how not to be a bad human being.
And
The empathy is reparative,
yeah.
not anger and hate and rage.
And the thing is that what this makes me think of is that so much of the time, or perhaps all of the time, abusers are this is generational, and these are themselves wounded people
Yeah,
who
yes.
then in turn wound others. And so that was something that I came to learn, for instance, about the adults, the abusive adults in my life. Like in particular, my father was very, very abusive, mostly to my mother, but he was a very troubled and wounded man. And so at some point, we can get to the place where we see them as wounded humans too. And I'm not saying that it takes away from our pain and our trauma, but as Anoki was saying, love is the most healing thing. And if we can get to that place where we understand, not necessarily in the moment, obviously, that these are also wounded people who never got the love and the empathy that they needed to grow and go beyond the default button of abuse. Then we can kind of come to our own healing. And if we ever have an opportunity to have one of those imagined conversations, that it would come from a place of love, as Anoki was saying. So yeah, so Taylor, there's so much to talk about already, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. I
It
mean,
really is.
this stems from those that literally made us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean,
Mhm.
there are so many generational things happening painfully before you step out of your house and get to school.
Mhm.
Before that's why there should be adults that you can talk to, not in your household. That's why so many children feel unsafe
Mhm.
to speak on the issues happening in their life because they are happening at home.
That's why we have to get kids back to school, because there are kids
Yeah.
that are in their homes right now that need to be able to come to school and have a safe adult to talk to, and they don't. And I can tell
I
that
was
the kids
abused
that
by
are
a
at
family
school
member,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
and I kept my mouth shut. I didn't tell that story until he was long and dead.
Mhm.
So it's very relatable. It was just something I just completely shut down about. And I did act out when I could at school to show my ass and get attention, however need be. Um, but that was the least of my issues. Like I had other issues, but
Well, it's like how Patty says in the book, you know, like you go from one adult to the next adult to the next adult, and it happens in like every environment, you know, like it's such a common thing, you know, that like I had a problem at home, I went to school, I had a problem at school, I went to friends, I had a problem with friends, I went to, you know,
I had a
neighbors,
problem
I
with
had a
friends'
problem with
parents,
neighbors, you know, yeah, friends,
neighbors.
parents. My you know, like this guy that I would talk to all the time would work on go-karts and stuff, you know, like all of a sudden out of nowhere one day, like we're sitting there and I'm like, I'm gonna go out and live in Oklahoma with my dad, you know, and he's like, oh, are you sure you want to leave? And I'm like, yeah, you know, and he grabbed my face and kissed me like a grown-ass woman, you know, and I didn't know, you know, like it was just another spot, you know, that happened in, you know, like it happened
And
all the
it's like
time.
a domino effect. It was, and
Yeah,
especially for those who relate
you
with the
tell one
female
person your
aspect.
problem, yeah, you tell one person your problem, and next thing you know, you're having that problem with that person. Like I confided in you, not I shared, you know, a secret that I enjoyed, you know, like
Yeah.
there's a huge difference, you know, like in that, you know, and so there's not a setup for trust. You don't feel like you could trust anyone. You don't feel like you can trust your friends. You don't feel like you can trust your family. You don't feel like you can trust anyone because nobody acts out of other people's feelings. You know, be kind unto, do unto others as you would have done unto you. You know, make new friends, keep the old one as silver in the other. Everything in our life, you know, all that important stuff is put on a back burner in this world, you know, and those are
Mm-hmm.
important songs little kids need to learn, you know,
Yep.
because they make people like me, you know, who can't understand that, you know, and who can't, you know, like I don't know if my personality was made up from the things that I went through or if it's something that we're born with, you know, but you know, I have like the weirdest personality in the world, you know, and it's an advocate, you know, like I gotta fight for everything, you know, things something's punching me in the face, I'm telling it I love it, you know, and it's gonna be okay and we'll get better, you know, and then I actually stop and think and try to figure out how to help that, you
Mm.
know, instead of
Yeah.
trying to necessarily help myself, you know, and
Go
then
inward.
later on
Yeah.
in life, my focus went inward and then I was able to put that outward. But
I feel like as a
it
mother and as an abused child, the abused child in us overprotects our children.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I can recognize that the abuse I suffered growing up was had a lot to do with substance abuse. It had a lot to do with sexual abuse that was definitely passed down through generations because you don't just become an abuser um, that way if not having been abused yourself. And so, you know, becoming a parent for me was like, I remember the day that my oldest came out of me, I said, it stops with me. There will never be a day that you will ever have to see what I saw or experience what
Mm-hmm.
I felt. You'll never have to go through that. Now, we also can't protect them forever.
Right.
Right.
So I hope that there are adults, you know, like these two beautiful women here, when you get to high school and you just fucking need someone to talk to,
Yeah.
that there are people there, you know, that can be that for them.
Right. You know, it's interesting, like how, you know, what triggered me when I was writing this story was this whole thing, like these units that we were given were all about, they always had, you know, they have these cute acronyms like
Yeah, so cute.
ACT, right? ACT, and it was ACT, and each letter stood for something. But what kept coming out was find a trusted adult, find a trusted adult, talk to a trusted adult. And and what was missing was, what if the adult that you thought you could trust turns out to be treacherous? Like, nothing, nowhere in these units did it talk about that. And I think this is kind of what we keep coming to, is that so much of what's happened to us and to so many others came at the hands of someone that we trusted. And like, you really do, like, when you think about what is trust, you know, like, how do we even define that? How do we know it? How can we recognize it? And I honestly think that it's when, you know, when someone behaves in who someone whose actions are in our best interest, someone whose actions and words are in our best interest. In other words, they're putting our interest, our needs, our concerns at the forefront. When, you know, when dealing like that, that is someone then you can trust. And in every one of these cases, they appeared to be someone who could do that, but it turned out that they were more interested in their agenda, whatever that agenda was, their needs, their interests, their desires,
Yeah.
their agenda.
And sometimes even the trusted adult, like I have had to call authorities, and you know, they say you're anonymous and nobody will find out, and the people that you reported on do find out, and then they come after you, and it's a very scary but by law, you have to report it. I worked at a daycare center once, and a student had a knot on his chest, looked like a hammer had hit him. We reported it. This kid would cry if a bug landed on him. He would break out in tears and scream. And the social worker or whoever came and investigated said he fell on the playground at daycare. And I told him, I said, listen, this kid, if he trips, he screams. So that did not happen at school. We would have known. And the day after the investigation, that kid was withdrawn from daycare and disappeared. And I think about him all the time, all the time. Little Lenny, this little, and they didn't help. And I know that didn't happen at the daycare. It just, even the people who are in authority that adults are trusting to help, we have to report it, Patti. And if
one of my childhood friends was sent to foster care, and when I tell you her life wasn't grandiose at home, it wasn't pretty. However, my mother made sure that I stayed in touch with this in particular girl throughout her time at foster care. And when I talked to her, I found out that she was being raped by the foster parents. And so I guess that proves my point. It's you go from one adult to the next,
and there's so many kids that have that same story.
There's
so many
the other
kids.
side.
It's a common denominator.
Yeah, there's the other side of that too, that as a kid, like you don't know how to express your emotion right. Like you're learning to be a person at this point in your life. Like you can't come up with the feelings behind whatever is going on. So you put them into these extreme categories, like as a child, all children are extremists, and like so it's either really nothing or really something. And as the conversation goes, these kids don't know what they're saying, so they're looking to see what your reactions are as they're saying it. Because I didn't understand as a kid that if I said, I wanted to die because I was being abused, that was going to put me in the hospital, and my abuse wasn't going to stop, and I was going to go home and I was going to go right back to my abuse, when really I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to be in the situation I was in. So as a child, I said, I want to die. I don't want to live like this, and they took it as, I just want to die. No, I want somebody to fix the problem that I'm going through, or help me, or be human, and hear me without jumping to conclusions. I'd say, oh, they touched my boob, like, and they'd be like, oh, was it a hug? Was it just like a weird hug?
You're immediately
like, no, somebody touched my boob, immediately you're telling me that, yeah, I'm gonna say, oh yeah, maybe it was, because I know that you're gonna beat me in the head with a stick later on because I said you touched my boob and you were hugging me, like, that's BS, but it's very important for those people. Yeah, it's very important for those.
Is not the first thing you get. You're tied up. You're stripped
put in
down.
A bed.
They want
lock
to make
doors.
Right. And I've had a couple of students, when they come back, that the trauma of the hospital is far worse than what got them Baker acted in the first place. So that's very hard on a teacher too. I tell my students, though, I'll talk to you anytime, but if you put anything in writing that I think your life is in danger, I have to report it. And, I've had students tell me, I don't ever want to talk to you again because you have to report it. It's the law. And what happens to kids when they get to the hospital is just, it's horrific. And I'm sure there's some good hospitals out there, but I haven't yet heard.
My first time running to a Safe Hands fire department, the fire department I ran to one time with my bike, and they called the police, and the police transferred me out of county to a place in West Palm because I lived in Broward, right on the line. Like, so I rode my bike from 441 and Sample as fast as I could to 441 and Sandalfoot. Just past there, there's a fire department on the left hand side, and I went there to that fire department and said, what I was dealing with and whatever. And they called a police officer. The police officer put me in the car in the back, drives me for a half hour up to West Palm, where I went to a halfway house, or like a state foster, or I don't know what it was. It was like a house with bars and on everything, like it had been yeah, it had been converted
Columbia.
or whatever.
Columbia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I was a little kid, like I went there or whatever, and I told them everything that I had been dealing with and stuff. And a family member showed up, and they said to me, I'm like, I'm a kid. I'm a little kid at this point in time. And they tell me, well, we can go in there and we can tell them, they asked to talk to me alone, and then while they're talking to me alone, they say, we can go in there and we can tell them, everything that happened, and this person can go to jail, and we're going to go, you have to tell your sisters, and we're going to end up going back to Oakland Park and staying down off Oakland Park and Andrews and eating cheeseburgers on the weekends, and you tell your sisters. And I went back inside and I told that place that I lied. And I never went to another safe hands place again.
It was easier.
How as a child was I supposed to tell my little sisters
that you were leaving them to that same abuse? Because if it wasn't you, it would be them.
No, that the person that was our dad
was doing
the person.
Monster.
Like
the show you told me to watch, Unbelievable, and the way that young girl who was raped, the way the police treat her, she just finally, after days, says, I made the whole story up because the way they're treating her and making her
Salem witch trials.
Crazy. She just said, you know what? In order for this to go away, I just have to lie and say I lied. And, when you see the other police officer dealing with that one girl who was a rape victim, and the compassion and the understanding, and you can see how one heals and the other one struggles because of the way the adults, the police, the counselors, the courts treated them. I mean, they talk like it's just teachers, but so many people need training on how to deal with, kids who have been through in horrific situations.
And that's the thing. It's kind of like I have a real problem with with anyone claiming that we live in a culture that cherishes and values our young people. It's like, that's fucking bullshit. It's bullshit. And this is what young people deal with all the time. It's not just confronting their abuser. It's having to deal with an entire system that is set up in a way that will often makes their situation worse, that compounds the trauma. So there is no relief and there's no escape from the kinds of abuse that young people go through, especially, and these are young people often who are poor, who have, things going on in their lives where, they could be in, like when, if you're from an abusive situation, or if you could be targeted by by abusers because you are a disadvantaged young person. And again, you run up against having to then say that this esteemed, respected person in the community did these terrible things to you. And so you're the one, right? This young person is the one who has to shatter the whole community's perspective on this person. And how is that? How is any young person supposed to navigate that?
And right now with social media, if a child does come out, like at our school, Patty, I'm not sure, I think you were there. It might not have been last year. I think it was the year before. It's all over the news, so it's not like I'm, putting this out there. But one of our teachers was having a relationship with started when the girl was 16, went till she was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came out, this teacher fired, facing criminal charges, thank goodness. The abuse that this young girl took from the students at my school, saying she ruined his life. And it took so much for me to get through to them. Usually the boys, I would say, so your sister is 16 years old. Do you want her to have, a relationship with a teacher? What would that be, your sister's fault because she's old enough to know? It's like the Monica Lewinsky thing all over. She was a child, 21. She was a child. She was a child.
The day that I ran away to that safe house was the day that I finally beat his ass. I mean, I just like went crazy and just beat the turd out of him. And he rolled over on top of me. He's a really heavy guy. He rolled over on top of me to pin me down so that I couldn't beat him up anymore. And my uncle had been upstairs and came downstairs and saw that. And it was the first time that anybody had defended me from him ever, And he grabbed him by the back of his shirt, threw him up against the wall and put his finger in his face. And he said, if you ever touch her again, I'll break your effing neck, in the most like,
and that's what
Rambo way, and then I hopped on my bike because my uncle said he couldn't take me anywhere, so I hopped on my bike and I hauled ass out of there, so when I chose to go back home, I then reneged all of what I had said to the safe house, and now I'm the kid that beat up her
for no reason,
stepfather,
yeah,
for no reason.
Now you're not the victim.
Yeah.
And he was like wearing it like the martyr of it, because I mean that was the day that my physical abuse ended, but the mental abuse went on beyond that, because he realized he couldn't overpower me after that point, so even with all this loss, I was still empowered, even with like the total defeat of having to go back home and live in the garage, I still felt empowered, and he wore it like a martyr, I have to go to work with all these bruises, like it was just like, but it became all about him, and then I was the bad guy, like you're saying, I was
yeah,
the bad guy forever, for my whole life. I've always been the bad guy because of situations like that, but that particular situation is exactly how that worked out for me, and I was the abusive, violent, 13-year-old, and he was the glorified, parent trying to help,
I have that uncle who I think 26 years old, and he started a memory triggered, and he goes, who did I used to say that to? And I told him, I said, it was me. And I told him, I said, if you ever do that to my niece, I will fucking kill you. And he laughed, and I said, I'm not joking. I will fucking kill you. And he walked out of the room, and it was like, oh my God, he is no longer going to terrorize me or my nieces and I was serious. I will fucking kill you.
And being an adult, you learn you can stand up for yourself. But as a child, he had my mom, he had my two younger sisters, like I had a lot to defend in that house, and then it was like a fixation thing, so if the fixation's like removed, then the stability is removed, and then it goes wherever, so like that's all stuff I had to live with too, because like I was trying to learn about all of it while I was going through it, like because like I tried to convince myself I was crazy. I tried to convince myself I was this bad kid. I was this bad
you
guy.
weren't trying to convince yourself you were crazy. People were making you feel like you were
They
crazy.
were telling me I was,
Right.
and I wanted to believe them, but it didn't feel right, you know. And then every way that I looked at it, it wasn't right, you know. But then they're telling me that I was wrong, you know. And after so many years of that, you feel insane, you know. You can't go anywhere. People don't want you to come over to their house because you might do something, even though you've never done anything, you know. Like and it sets you up for life, you know, for life. I literally laid down and died. I went out into the woods for 7 years and just like walked this country, you know,
Those
and like stayed in people's
feel, but the mental abuse is forever in our head, and we twist it around and think about it. To this day, I think about the things my uncle did to me, and it's still, you know.
And I'll tell you from my experience that I had to separate myself from everything so that I could actually define myself and see who I was for the first time in my life when I was 25.
Yeah, I think the only thing that helped me get through it is helping other kids.
Right.
You know, because, you know, it even going to family functions with my uncle there, you know, it's and now finally years later, other family members are saying, yeah, he's not welcome at our house. You're not gonna believe what he did. And it's like, I know what he did. Like,
surprise!
My face. He put a cigarette out on my face. Like, I know what I can't be around him. And then he'll, you know, they do know how to twist that brain, because he said to me once, you know, I'm going to leave my house to you because of all the terrible things I did to you. And I'm like, I don't want your house.
I don't want it.
There's evil in your house. I don't want your house. I don't want your
money.
I don't want anything to do with you. I pray for you.
I think the worst part about it is that in the act of the abuse, the abusers make you think that the abuse is normalcy.
Yes.
So for years of my abuse personally, and I think Patti can attest to this with her father at least, you think that it's part of life. That is the case for everyone. I thought, you know, everyone had to do, it was totally normal to me. And it wasn't until I became a parent.
You think it's just how it has to be.
Yeah, honestly. And I mean, it took me years to even process that aspect of it. But it wasn't until I was a parent and I had a newborn baby, and I called my cousin one day and I was like, I don't know how to wash my kid. She was like, what? Like, I don't want to touch him.
Right. I want to.
She was like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I told her, like, I have, you know, our grandfather had abused me for years, and please don't fucking tell my mom, because I don't want to be the one that ruins it for everyone. And now, mind you, he had been dead for years at this point. I was at his deathbed and did my part and forgave him. And in my mind, that was it. But I was still broken and traumatized as a 20-year-old mom. And when she immediately, because fucking thanks, cuz, called my mom on the phone and told my mom.
Please tell me your mom supported you.
Well, this is the thing. My mom was also abused by the same man who was her father, sexually, physically, emotionally, mentally. And so after she dumped his ashes down the toilet.
Go, Mom.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Mom. She did. She called me and she's like, I just dumped that motherfucker's ashes down the toilet. But it immediately became this awakening in her, deep in her. And it became about her because all of her abuse surfaced. So then I had to process my mother's abuse. And I kind of
and your mother's
didn't feel like
protecting you. Your mom didn't protect
you.
you.
I still was like missing, you know, what I needed.
That is the most traumatizing part of the repair process. That is the most traumatizing part of the repair process. Like, Like I finally healed from all of my wounds and stuff. You know, I got my side of the street all cleaned up, and I got my life right, and separated myself, and then I didn't even expose any of it. It was found while, like, they literally found his torture box while they're moving my family out of the house, you know, and and it happened, you know, like
And then your mom's
even
traumatized by what she finds in the box.
I let it go, and then I had to watch my mom process it. That's something that I went through all of it for, so that I didn't have to deal with that at that point, because she wasn't going to accept it then, you know, and I didn't want her to, you know, when I realized what it was going to have to be for her, you know, so I had already let it all go, you know, and then my little sister, and then my other sister, you know, and then all these people in the family who all of a sudden all these lights are going off in their head for other situations, you know, and stuff. And like if I had known, you know, like I get so repetitive with the same sayings that I say all the time, you know, empathy is the wordless language we're taught so hard to ignore, but at the end of the day, nothing could be more important. It is what it is, but it'll be what you make it. That one is so important, because I didn't know that, because everybody always told me it is what it is. 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 It ruined my fucking life. Okay, until I heard somebody say, "But it'll be what you make it." And when they said that to me, my life changed in that moment. You know, like that was one of the seriously important things. Like I already knew if other people cared one little spit about me being a human and existing in this world, you know, then they would have done something already. You know, like so empathy was the, you know, is the wordless language, is my life motto, you know. It is what it is, but it'll be what you make it. Yeah, it is what it is, but it'll be what you make it, is what gets me through every single day, you know. There's always going to be some.
Anoka, you cannot, they have to forgive themselves. You've already forgiven them for not believing you, for not, and their guilt now cannot be part of what you carry anymore.
Oh yeah, the ones that I'm separated from,
that's on them, and they have to forgive themselves. And you, it's, you know, you just
the ones that have separated from me, that refuse to accept everything, you know, like I watch them suffer in their life every day. I see, you know, as much as I miss them being a part of my life, you know, like I came to the realization, you know, I used to say, oh, the fat man, oh, the person that abused me, oh, the pastor my mom married, oh, you know, all this stuff or whatever, you know. And just recently my grandfather passed away, you know, and I needed to see my Nana, and I needed to see him, you know, and I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral, you know. And I met up with my Nana later on, you know, and my Nana's talking to me, and she's like, oh, you know, uh uh your father, and correcting herself, you know, and calling him by his name, you know, your father, you know. And it made me realize, you know, yeah, it was my father, you know. And I had separated myself from that for a long time, and I had made a lot of, you know, excuses, you know, to be there still, you know. I took all this stuff hoping one day things were going to change, and they weren't, you know. Like it didn't matter what I was going to do, it was just that it was something bad, and that person had to live up to that. Otherwise, that was them. That's not me. That's not anything I have control over. I can never ever change or affect him, my grandmother, the rest of his family. Most of them talk to me, but the really important ones, like my Nana, who raised me every day, you know, in the absence of either one of them, you know, those people, you know, I I feel so bad for them. I love them so much.
Hurting. They let you, their granddaughter, their niece, their loved one suffer. And then after the suffering did not support you. So the reason they're hurting is because guilt can kill your soul, and their souls are dark because of what they didn't do. And so if it sucks that you don't talk to them anymore, but sometimes you have to heal yourself and let people go so that you can just be whole again.
Well,
Yeah, those lessons are so important.
That's what I said to my family, you know, like the moment that my grandfather passed, my papa passed, the second that that happened, I know he knows, you know, and all
That's
of
right.
my Christian family, like if you know, they get where they're going, you know, and everything is right, then their eyes are open, and in that moment, you know, like the moment my grandfather passed, you know, like I knew he knew, you know, I knew he
I
knew.
don't,
And
it used to make me laugh thinking about my uncle passing. Not that I want, you know, I don't wish that on any human being, but thinking about my uncle and all the family who passed going, where's Uncle Mike? I thought he passed. Yeah, he didn't make it up here.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
not here. He's somewhere else. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, you know, accountability is everything.
And though I still believe in forgiveness, I know I believe in God. I believe God will forgive you, but if you don't own up to it, you know, and ask for that forgiveness, you know, my
For
uncle
me,
has
those
never. He
lessons.
tells other people that he treated Michelle so bad growing up, but he never said to me, "I'm sorry for the things I did to you," even though we've been
Right.
around many times, you know.
That's right.
So
That's where you
I
have to
can't
take that forgiveness on, because those I'm sorries are never coming for the most part. I mean, on a rare blue moon, perhaps, but you know, it was for me that healing and that, you know, how Inoki said, those lessons, they come. And for me, that was like, oh my, things started clicking in my head. Oh, that's why my mom is an addict. That's why they're all
Right.
fucked
Right.
up, because they were all abused. That's why this is so. The forgiveness kind of still happened, and then I focused my blame onto my mother, and it was a high school teacher, Mr. Bosici, who looked at me one day and said, "How long are you going to allow your mother to be your excuse for failure?" And it was hard. That was a hard one, but he was right, because I had then become, you know, a miniature version of her, masking my pain with drugs and you know, self-abuse, and not realizing, you know,
You do
doing
it
the
either with
same
drugs
thing.
or alcohol. I did it with food. My
Yeah.
older brother did it with drugs and alcohol for, you know, he's only been clean a couple of years, thank God. But it when I see somebody who is obese, I look at them and say, that was me.
That was pain. Yeah.
I masked everything with food because my mother didn't drink, so there was no alcohol in the house. My brother, 14, left, moved to New York, and was just doing drugs and alcohol. And you do, that teacher knew, and I think Patti and I both know too, you can see the child,
you know who it is,
who is suffering, and
yeah,
whether it's physical, mental abuse, even whether it's malnutrition, whether it's when I watch these shows where the kids are living in the hoarder's house, I think, how has a teacher not smelled that kid and known that we need to get this help? But you know, Patti and I have about 130 kids a day, and now that they're virtual, it's so difficult to tell the things that are going on with them. It's so difficult.
You know,
so Patti, I just want to go ahead.
Go ahead. You go first, and then I'll go.
I just wanted to, I mean, in your little town, you were dealing at 13 with a murder.
Right. Right.
A murder that everyone swept under the rug.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. It was the murder of an altar boy. And
it wasn't until your adulthood.
Right. Yeah.
It was, they were like, hey, this guy's guilty. This pastor has been pastor's been abusing children for years.
Yeah. So this was Danny Croto, and there's a book written, Murder of an Altar Boy. It's very, very detailed book. And so Danny Croto, we were both the same age, and he was from a very large Irish family. and he was an altar boy, and so were his younger brothers. You know, all of his brothers, they were all old altar boys at St. Catherine's Church, which is the church that I went to. And when he was 13 years old, he was found murdered on the banks of the Connecticut River. His head was smashed with a rock. And the only suspect that the Springfield police had was Father Levine, the priest in our church. And they were wanting to build a case against Father Levine, and it was mainly because of his odd behavior after the Danny's murder. And also he was like, you know, like the last person who saw him and all of this stuff. And there was a suspicion of abuse that they hadn't quite proven yet. And at any rate, it was that case was kind of taken out of the Springfield police detectives' hands, went to the state police, and then it was covered. Then it was kind of like, oh yeah, no, they didn't bring charges up against Father Levine for murder. But what happened was they brought charges up against Father Levine for molestation. And
what year was this? Because, you know, the
1972.
moved those priests to other.
That's exactly what happened. So Father Levine was moved to another parish in a smaller town, and then another parish, and then another parish. It took 20 years for him to be convicted. And when he was finally convicted, he was convicted of not murder, but 40 plus cases of child molestation, all altar boys, from the various churches. So from St. Catherine's and from the two other churches in Massachusetts. So and to this day, as far as I know, he is the only priest in Massachusetts that has been found guilty of child molestation. And you know, there are others, but I think that in my mind, that was a give that they had to do because because there was high suspicions that he actually was responsible for Danny Croto's murder. And
honestly, though, being in jail for raping 40 children, his life is much more difficult than if he was in there for murder. So
yeah, but he never did jail time.
Oh God.
No, he was given home arrest, and so he was confined to his home. Yeah, he was confined to his home. He was never sent to jail. And he was still on the payroll of the diocese.
There's a movie.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if it was a movie. If it was a movie, I
think I've seen a documentary or something.
It could have been a documentary.
Memories of a movie that I saw about priests and getting. Yeah, it's.
Well, it's a prominent thing. I had a friend call me the other day from Georgia. She's my age, had been, you know, a big part of this church. And she was on Facebook the other day. And this woman, our age, a woman, had been accused of molesting she was in charge of the children. She was in charge of the children, the nursery part of the church, and had been charged with all of these counts of molestation at like 35 years old and was arrested. And my friend called me like, my kids grew up with this woman. Now I don't know if my kids have been hiding abuse for years. And I mean, it's just so prominent.
Yep.
It's wild.
Well, the abusers often will, that's why the Boy Scouts are under investigation, because, the people who have a tendency to abuse children want to be in elementary school. They want to have access. They need access. And so they need access. And so we see this.
Well, if you are in charge of a child, you need to have an FBI background. If you want to become a member of the Boy Scouts, good for you. Boy Scouts are an incredible organization, but there are some pedophiles in the organization. There should have to be an FBI background check. You're going overnight camping trips.
Well, the problem is there's so many people who've never been charged with anything.
Right.
They have clean records because they've never been caught.
Right. They've never been charged. They've never been caught.
Check my background.
My abusers still walking around. Totally.
Hey, I'm a priest, or I'm an upstanding
in the same county. Two of you live.
Yep. So I think that this has been a really valuable conversation, and hopefully people who are listening live or who will listen to this recording at some point will get, will feel vindicated or healed, or that this will impact people in a positive way, who listen to it. Obviously, this is something that needs to be talked about more. And we need to normalize, if things are going to be normalized,
Right.
then we need to normalize having ordinary conversations about experiences in environments where people can be heard, and where empathy, as Anoki said, where empathy is the rule of the day, and that is what needs to be normalized, as far as I'm concerned. So if this little, humble little conversation that we're having here, that kind of came about because of a story that I wrote in my book, then it contributes to it, then I'm happy about it. But it definitely is something that we all need, whether we've been abused, or whether we have people close to us that have been. It's really, really important.
It was the chapter in your book that definitely, I remember coming back to school after winter break saying, oh my God, that chapter just like, just, oh, it just tore at my soul. I felt like I was the one walking through the pages, and I'm sure all of us here are, hearing Noki's story and Taylor's stories. Oh my God,
Well, what's crazy too is both me and Taylor have a story recently that has to do with abuse and people around people who are abusers and how it affects them, and I mean, not to just bring it up on the show, but I've been wanting to talk to you about it for a while, because you had said you noticed that I backed off from being a fan of Nako long before that had happened.
Mm.
And but a musician that we
Now, this is
really
where it
followed
gets
had
fucked
really
up,
beautiful
Anoki, because
healing
now the
music.
healer has become an abuser. Wait.
Yeah. So that's the same as like a pastor or a person of influence or a figure,
Absolutely.
But this
Absolutely.
is on a global scale of
Yeah.
millions of people listening to this guy play music and some of the most healing, reparative songs, and then about a year or two after sharing him with everyone and coming across them, I started noticing just some weird vibes, like real ego vibes in his songs, and it made
Even in
me
his
feel
pictures.
it made me feel that strange familiar feeling that I would have,
That
where
musician would
like
even
I
be
recognize things like that a lot better, because I've
In my
stared at
last
my life
encounter with
like
him, it was
I
awkward. And my
I've
husband was standing beside me and he didn't give a fuck. So
yeah.
kind of scary to
yeah.
be a musician
Wow.
because we all go goo goo gaga and we just are so enamored by
Right, and that's the point.
Mhm.
That's the point.
Mhm.
But this is a whole entire culture. This is a whole movement.
It
Like,
was
we're
literally
supposed to be
a movement. And it
Who's the
became like
musician?
that's pretty much when I step back. Okay, is like the second that I feel cult vibes from something,
Mm-hmm.
well, look at
I
Festi Life.
I
It
will.
changes the way you look at festivals forever. Am I not like, do I want to go take my kids to a festival now that I know there are pedos
Well,
running around the
Okay, who
I
is
don't
it? Because
know.
I don't know if you noticed my poster right here, but this is from a festival I went to. Music is my life. Who are we talking about?
this is Nako, the lead singer for Nako and Medicine for the People. He's Native American. He's indigenous. He sings some beautiful, amazing songs. He started out, with like a Christian background, so his songs really move you. Like you almost want to throw your hand up, like you're in the front,
church.
Of church.
Drawn
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
he has that vibe because he grew up there. Like and when he came out, it was a really empathy based, movement, of caring for people and building bridges and repairing yourself. I played his music for people, and my friend Lizzie Pitch, Lizzie,
Yes,
I played Nako for Lizzie, right? And Lizzie, I look over at her and she's like hysterically crying, and she looks over and she's like, if you have a heart splitter, he would pull it out. And then I heard that from like everybody else that listened to him that had played it, and it almost became like that thing. But then, after I had started getting weird cult vibes, I was following, and I still was following his sites and stuff, and I saw something about abuse, and I clicked on it, and bam, like he'd been abusing lots of women and young girls, at his festivals and stuff,
Sadly, people don't think he was abusing because they threw themselves at him. They were, they wanted to go back to his trailer. They wanted
his manager came out and said that one young girl in particular, at that one in particular concert that made the big ripple in the pool, it wasn't Nako that invited her to the show. It was fucking Chase. So, it's like, it was a whole...
She's like, that Chase was like the Maxine Giz,
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, you need to put one on for me. I don't know. Yeah. But it made me think, cancel culture is dangerous shit, but it definitely made me think twice. And
but it also, I think,
forgiving the abuser, and when the abuser becomes, somebody that you thought was healing you. I mean, I guess that's really relatable to those who are in a church setting as well. This is the person that preaches to you about Jesus Christ every day and how we can live to be like Jesus Christ, but on the off time you're abusing children sexually. I think that, like, the what would Jesus do thing really always blew my mind.
Trust,
because people are, no, you're fine. People are,
I think the most important
want perfection.
Take from
but Jesus
is that it takes a village. And even if it's not your friend, it's not your daughter, it's not your student, like, you have to get involved and you have to speak up and you have to be willing to take, the wrath of people, because protecting children,
essentially it just makes me feel like that about everything. I've just become very untrustworthy as an adult for young people. I immediately question things. I immediately question the proof of everything. Okay, well, what about them? What about this adult?
That's where I was going with it, because the whole title of this is trusted adults,
trusted and treacherous.
Trusted and treacherous.
That are treacherous.
Exactly. But to trust is to open yourself up and be at your most vulnerable. And so to trust is to test the honor of those around you, and the honor that they carry, because you can't not trust anyone ever, but you have to know that when you're trusting someone, that you're vulnerable, willingly vulnerable, and that puts you in a position that when people are predators, they feed on that, so it makes you want to shut down and not trust anyone,
But look, Anoki, look how that played out. So someone like Patti, who looked for adults that were trustworthy all throughout her young adult life, into her adult life, right? She didn't have that. And yet she became that for you, for me, for countless others at the back door of a cafe. You know what I mean? Like, it makes
because there was honor.
Or like in a classroom.
There was honor where we offered trust,
Yeah.
Like we trusted Patti, and Patti is honorable.
Well, and I want to just, but I also want to say this, Taylor, that you ended the generations of abuse in your family. It stopped with you. You ended that karma train. You did that. You own
I mean,
that.
I feel like I was
Yeah.
incarnated into this lifetime, into this bloodline, into this lineage just for that
You're part
purpose.
of that.
I think so. And
Yeah.
you know, and you
Yeah.
and look at what you've done as a parent. Look at what Anoki's doing as a parent.
Yeah.
So you guys are you guys are turning it around, and you're taking though that woundedness, and you have turned it into something really beautiful and healing, not only for your children, but for all around you, just as I've done, just as Michelle has done. This is what we've done with our woundedness. And so there, you know, there are just as much as there, the abusers are often the wounded who have continued in those patterns. There are those of us who have stopped and done what we could to heal and to find, as empathy, as Anoki said, empathy and healing, and stop the abuse in, you know, and do something beautiful with our wounds, be as healing as we can be to those young people and adults in our lives who need healing, who are wounded. And that is that cannot be yes, that cannot be a contribution that is minimized in any way. We have none of us, there are 4 women here right now, and we have no idea how expansive our actions and our intentions have been, and we have many years to go in what we do as we walk this earth. So it's
Uh,
really good, right? It's good to know that. And you know, and I kept thinking, right, as Anoki and you and all of us were talking, that maybe this is something that we need to do on a regular basis, is to have aside from, you know, Wildflowers live stream, but
A
literally
good circle
something, yeah,
to have.
like a sister circle or something. We don't have to call it that, but
oh, we're
something.
gonna do the after hours.
Well, we could do that, but something that is very specific, that could be on its own time. You see,
Yeah.
that could be on its
Yeah,
own
I
time
feel
and
like we
regularly.
messed it up a little bit today.
No, you
I
didn't.
assure you
No,
that
not at
every
all.
single woman or person, I don't care how you identify, you have a story. You've
Yeah.
experienced this in
Yeah.
some shape or form in your lifetime,
Yeah.
whether it
So
be you or a loved one.
Yep. Yeah.
True.
this brings me to my third and final chanting quote thing that I say all the time, which is also my band name. So I always say empathy is the wordless language. It is what it is, but it'll be what you make it. And the last but not least one is stitches leave smiles. You know, every scar you have is something that you can look back on
Mm-hmm.
and you could say, that affected me once this way and I survived it. And so it can never happen to me the exact same way ever, 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 ever again. All right. And if it can't happen to me the same exact way, then that scar is my little piece of imperviousness. And imperviousness is a quality that only superpowers or superheroes possess. So that makes me a little bit of a superhero.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
stitches leave smiles. I can smile about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know.
Well, if you guys are down for doing something like this, we could call it whatever we want, but it could be a regular thing that we get together. We invite friends, we invite colleagues, we invite others who want to participate in this kind of conversation about hard topics, about things that, you know, mental health issues, abuse issues, these kinds of things that we need to have more context to talk
Yeah.
about. I would love to do that. I'd love to host it so we can chat more about this. Anoki, you did not ruin it in any way. This has been
Well,
a
it seemed like
beautiful.
everybody was talking, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, aren't we supposed to read?" I was like, maybe we should just stop talking. And I was like, "Well,
Yeah.
we're not reading." And I was like, "But everybody's talking, so."
Yeah, but I think like the story
There have been
itself.
30 people here who had never read the story, but we all knew it inside and out because
Yeah.
we had loved it.
Mhm.
But Patty, you said something about we have no idea because it's my brother's birthday, so I have to go to a luncheon with him. But I'm going to leave on this little note. You said we have no idea about the impact, and I just wanted you to know that my favorite song is "Ripple" by the Grateful Dead.
Mhm.
And you do. We all have a ripple effect
Mhm.
that even if it's just one person that you touch, that person touches another person, another person. So I will leave you guys with
that.
Ripple by the
Thank
Great
you,
It was great to
Michelle, for
meet
sharing
you.
with us
It was,
today.
Michelle,
yeah, it was so awesome. My brother's birthday is
Of course,
tomorrow.
her
but
name's Michelle.
yeah, does it say Elizabeth up there?
no, it
Because
says
that,
home.
No,
There's
no,
Taylor
it's
Michelle Callahan over here.
It's my mom's name.
oh,
Oh yeah.
well, I really enjoyed it, Patty. I'll talk to you more about it because we always talk at lunch.
Yes, of course.
But I
Thank you.
did. I really enjoyed
Thank you, both of you, for
It.
being teachers
Yeah,
that actually listen
Thank
to
you.
young people. Thank you. You
No,
make
I
a
don't do a
difference
lot.
every day, I promise.
I really do. It's the one and only thing. I don't have children, but in my life, I know I was called.
But you do. You have 107 of them, or
When
what have
people
you.
ask, do you have kids? I said 133 every day.
That's right. That's right.
Well, go listen to Ripple because we do touch each other, whether we think we do or not. Thank
That's
you,
right.
Anoki, for sharing, and Taylor, thank you, and thank you, Patty, for
Absolutely,
inviting.
Michelle. Thank you
And
so
I
much
will.
for joining us.
I'll see you at lunch tomorrow.
Hey, I'll be
I'm
there.
going to the Bend today, the rooftop, to go take my
Nice.
brother to lunch. So I will see you guys again. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Bye, Michelle.
Can't wait to see
Bye.
your little girl, Taylor.
We'll see. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this has been really awesome, and I am serious.
What a healing session, ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I think this might be something separate from Wildflowers. This might be separate thing that we create where it's an open dialogue. It's an open dialogue. And I would really be interested in doing that with you guys if you'd like to. But this has been awesome. How you doing?
I just want to say, while we end this, I'm sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt you for the 17th time today.
No. I was about to.
Your acronym for ACT, you changed.
Right.
A is for alone, because sometimes you walk alone for a while before you find someone to lean on. You may not be able to count on anyone. So buck up, grow a thick skin, and learn how to defend yourself. Learn to respect and love yourself. C is for caution. Just because someone seems trustworthy doesn't mean they are. Just because adults trust another doesn't mean you should. And just because someone has a title, degree, or authority doesn't mean you should do as they say. Don't trust anyone until they have earned your trust. T is for treachery. Treachery lives in unexpected places. Treachery is a chameleon, a smiling face, a good time. Treachery knows what you want and need and will bait you with it. Treachery lays a beautiful trap. Learn how to recognize those traps and learn how to love yourself enough to walk away. And those are so powerful, those words there. That acronym, it means, there's a lot of self-love in there. And I think that the generations coming up need that. And I think it's an important lesson, as a teacher, that you learn how to implement that with your students, because you are making an impact with ripples that you may never know, but that are affecting generations to come.
Universal echoes.
So thank you.
Universal echoes. Right on.
Love that.
I
right
think
through timelines and shit.
Yeah, man.
That was just for my star friend Patti.
Well, and I think that we are doing, in our own humble ways, we are doing the humble work, and so I'm very proud to be doing it with you guys. So
Yeah, she immediately deflects Anoki, like it's we, it's not I. Take some credit.
Like,
look at Taylor putting her hair down for this conversation.
Hey, Anoki.
Hey.
I have to go. I just received note that I have to go. Look, now you've made me blush. Thanks, Patti. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you are. Is she?
Anoki knows she cute though. Anoki knows.
She's cute.
Well, I had to get halfway decent to look like your morning face, you know.
No.
Oh man, but listen,
Now we're all
I have to
blushing.
go into the forest like a
Okay.
fairy. I love you both so much.
I love you too, and this has been so much fun. And
Love you all.
have fun in the forest.
Love you, love you, love you.
We'll talk soon. We'll talk soon. I'd like to personally thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, please subscribe. And I hope you join us again next week for Wildflowers Live.